Welcome to this explainer. Look, I am so incredibly thrilled to have you here today because we're tackling something that I think pretty much everyone has felt recently. You know the feeling, right? You're lying in bed, it's like 11:30 at night, and an alert pops up on some investing app you honestly barely remember downloading. And it's telling you about some new crypto coin or a 10x AI startup or a stock that's quote-unquote guaranteed to triple. Honestly, it feels like the entire definition of investing has been completely hijacked by flashy apps and exhausting trends. It feels a lot less like building a future and, well, a whole lot more like gambling with extra steps. But today, we're going to look at the exact opposite approach. We're going to map out why the real secret to financial freedom isn't loud, and it certainly isn't fast. It is profoundly, beautifully boring.
Because, let's face it, there's this exciting trap that we all kind of fall into. The rented Lamborghinis, the constant group chat tips, that endless exhausting cycle of chasing the absolute next big thing. It drains your energy, and honestly, it rarely moves your account balance in the right direction. But the wealthy reality is so much different. While everyone else is stressing over minute-by-minute charts, there's someone you went to high school with who quietly crossed a seven-figure net worth last spring. And how'd they do it? By driving an old Toyota, ignoring the hype, and buying the most boring possible assets automatically every single month for 15 years. They definitely don't have crazy stories to tell at dinner parties, but they do have unshared spreadsheets that prove they've secured their total freedom.
Okay, let's dive into this data because it is absolutely eye-opening. The exciting investments out there are quite literally designed to extract your money. The overwhelming majority of people playing the exciting game are losing. Seriously, studies consistently find that anywhere from 75 to 95% of retail day traders lose money over multi-year periods. The thrilling, fast-paced categories sell you the story of that one person who won big, and they quietly bury the millions who completely lost their shirts.
So let's jump right into Section 1, the foundation, tax advantage market builders.
So, if the exciting stuff is a trap, what's the actual solution? Well, it starts with core systems that absolutely do not require you to predict trends or be some sort of intense financial genius. They only require your participation. Let's start with the ultimate boring asset, the total market index fund. You just buy a tiny slice of every major American business and you let it sit. The math here is just staggering. Take $745,000 for instance. If you invest just $500 a month in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund for 30 years, assuming a historical 8% average annual return, your account grows to roughly $745,000. But here's the absolute kicker. You only contributed $180,000 over those 3 decades. The remaining $565,000, that came purely from compound interest. The market literally does the heavy lifting, you just have to keep showing up.
Now, to really supercharge those index funds, you need the right vehicles to legally exploit IRS rules. First up, your 401k. For 2026, you can put in up to $24,500. And look, if you skip your employer match, you are quite literally leaving thousands of dollars of free money on the table. Next is the Roth IRA. You put in after-tax money up to $7,500 in 2026, and every single dollar of growth is yours to keep 100% tax-free in retirement. We are talking about legally shielding hundreds of thousands of dollars from the IRS over a lifetime. It's a real game changer.
But wait, the most underappreciated tool on that list? It's the HSA. Here's how the wealthy use a health savings account not as some basic medical checking account, but as the ultimate stealth retirement builder. Step 1. You maximize those contributions. Step 2, you pay today's medical expenses out of pocket and just save the receipts. Step 3, invest the HSA funds so they actually grow. And Step 4, reimburse yourself completely tax-free decades later. It's literally the only account with a triple tax advantage. It's tax-deductible going in, tax-free growth, and tax-free coming out for medical expenses.
All right, moving on to Section 2, tangible and yielding assets.
Now that we've laid down that solid foundation with tax-advantaged accounts, we're shifting from pure stock market growth to assets that provide a sturdy defense and reliable cash flow when life gets, well, unpredictable. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that these fixed-income assets are never going to make you rich overnight. But honestly, they aren't supposed to. Series I bonds protect your money directly against inflation. Treasury bills give you state tax-exempt yield completely backed by the U.S. government. And dividend index funds quietly reinvest payouts to buy more shares. In fact, historically, dividends account for roughly 40% of the total return of the S&P 500. These assets exist purely to reliably defend your portfolio against market crashes and inflation, all while paying you along the way.
Okay, so let's talk real estate. But first, a pretty major warning. According to the Atlanta Fed, owning a median-priced home right now consumes nearly 48% of the median household's income. Guys, that is a wealth destroyer.
If you buy more house than you can comfortably afford, the carrying costs are going to eat all of your appreciation alive. The house basically ends up owning you instead of the other way around. The actual path to wealth in real estate looks completely different from what those over-leveraged online gurus are constantly teaching. The boring rental strategy is incredibly simple. You buy a modest single-family home, put 25% down, lock in a fixed-rate mortgage, find reliable tenants, and then you just hold it for 15 to 30 years. You literally let your tenants patiently pay down your mortgage over 2 decades. There are no exotic financing tricks here, no complex spreadsheets, just patience. And yeah, the willingness to occasionally fix a broken water heater.
Which brings us to Section 3, the ultimate high-yield asset, you.
If you're under 50, this is arguably the single most important investment you can possibly make. The ultimate high-yield asset is, quite simply, you. I really want this number to sink in, 400% ROI. Imagine you spend $2,000 on a specific certification, maybe doing it over a few months of evenings. And let's say that certification lands you an $8,000 a year raise. Well, in year 1 alone, that is a 400% return on your investment. And that $8,000 raise, it compounds over the rest of your entire career. 10 years down the line, that initial $2,000 investment could result in $150,000 of additional lifetime earnings. There is literally no stock, no real estate deal, and no business venture that reliably outperforms directly investing in your own earning capacity and skills.
Finally, Section 4, the power of boredom.
So we've covered the core assets, but just knowing what they are isn't enough. We have to bring them all together with a central behavioral philosophy, because success in wealth building fundamentally requires resisting the urge to tinker. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we've been talking about. In a massive survey of over 10,000 millionaires, 79% received zero inheritance, none. 31% never made over $100,000 a year in their entire working lives. 80% invested heavily in their company 401k, and my absolute favorite stat here, exactly 0% attributed their wealth to single stock picking. Not one. The average millionaire actually crossed that mark at age 49, after 28 years of incredibly boring, repeatable, predictable habits.
Which brings us to this defining thought. Wealth building is largely a function of how willing you are to be bored. Think about it for a second. These boring assets actually punish your attention, and they reward your absence. The more you look at your S&P 500 fund, the more likely you are to panic and do something foolish. The biggest threat to your long-term returns is not a market crash. It's your own need for excitement. The most successful portfolios literally belong to people who set the system up and then completely walk away.
But look, here's the hard truth. You cannot invest consistently if your financial foundation is crumbling. You can't max out a Roth IRA if surprise expenses just keep putting you back into credit card debt, right? To get there, you need a reset before you can build wealth. You have to clarify your real numbers, stop the money leaks, and build a solid 30-day foundation plan. Establishing this kind of financial reset system is exactly what prepares you to actually capture the math of all these boring assets. Let's wrap things up today with this final provocative question. Boring builds wealth. Exciting builds stories. Which matters more to you when you're 70? The exciting life gives you great tales for a dinner party, sure. But the wealthy life? That gives you absolute freedom and options. The math honestly doesn't care how you feel about it. It only compounds for the people who consistently show up and do the quiet work. Ultimately, the choice is yours. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, I hope this helps you build a phenomenally boring and incredibly wealthy future.